First, I want to introduce our two people, and I would just like to say that if I really have to introduce those two people to this audience, then we are in trouble. And then I want to outline what our ground rules will be. It is my real pleasure to introduce to you Tariq Ramadan, who is currently Professor of Contemporary Islamic Studies at St. Anthony's College in Oxford. He is also the president of the European Muslim Network and one of the leading intellectuals and thinkers in the contemporary Islamic world, as reflected in his two most recent books, one, What I Believe, the one that has just come out, and then the one that I've already used a couple of times as a textbook in class, his discussion of radical reform. And that will be our subject that we will be focusing on. And then have the pleasure of introducing my boss, the John Esposito, University Professor, Founding Director of the Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Professor of, I have to look down to make sure I get this title, Professor of Religion and International Affairs. He has worked extensively in lots of areas, again, quite recently working very closely with Gallup to produce a very already influential book with Dalia Mugahid called Who Speaks for Islam. And his current, most recent book is The Future of Islam, which provides some of the framework for what he will be discussing with Tariq, because he talks about Tariq in this book. Now, let me just quickly say the rules of the game for this afternoon are relatively simple. Tariq will talk for 10 or 15 minutes. John will talk for 10 minutes or so. The two of them will have a conversation here for about 15 or 20 minutes. At that point, I will get back up so that they know that they're supposed to stop talking. And we can have a Q&A for another period of time. So that it is my pleasure then, Tariq and John, let's welcome Tariq Ramadan and John Esposito. You can go first. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation 6 years later to come back to the United States of America and to be able to be here. Let me start by thanking really the ACLU, who, the organization from the beginning, they were involved in supporting me with the AAR, the American Academy of Religions, the American Association of University Professors, and Penn. I promised to go first there in New York, and I was there last Thursday for a lecture. But also from the very beginning, when we heard about the story, I got support, and more than support, really something which has to do with the dignity of supporting values and being close to the struggle, and say it has to do with academic freedom of speech, but it has to do also with the dignity of this country. One of the first to be in touch with me and to support me was Professor John Esposito, and for this, thank you so much. And around him, of course, Professor Wall and so many others that I don't have time to just call their names, but from the beginning I got lots of support from the people, and people who don't necessarily agree with me, but they think that in a democratic society you should not support someone you agree with, but even though you are open to a critical debate, and this is why we are here, is something which is very important, to let the people in, to express their views and to be open to the critical debate. And this is the very essence of a democratic society and what we need today. And also with me is Muna Ali, who was supporting me. We met 10 years ago, and she's very much supportive of all the work I've been doing. So I wanted her to be with me in the first trip to this country as a symbol of people who are supporting me close to what I'm trying to do. So thank you for being here as well. Let me go straight to some of the things that I've been trying to translate in my work and my books. Close to the title of today, Muslims Today, Radical Reform, is the book that I wrote 2 years ago about radical reform, Islamic ethics, and liberation. Let me tell you something about my journey around within the Islamic studies. I started at the beginning by thinking that we have challenges, and mainly the challenges ahead for us as Muslims in the contemporary world, in the Muslim majority countries, as well as in the West, were to be dealt with within the specific field of fiqh, Islamic law and jurisprudence. And I've been working on this and having a series of books. One series was about Muslims in Muslim majority countries and Islam, the West, and the challenges of modernity, in which way we have to deal with this, and a series of books on Western Muslims. And it started with To Be a European Muslim, Western Muslims and the Future of Islam, and the last one, which is a very short summary of what I think. I was asked to write something very short because people don't read, don't have time to read, and especially journalists. This is what I believe. It's a summary of some of the main thoughts. But also, through this work, I felt that with my work, and especially in what we were doing in the field of fiqh, we were reaching limits. And inductively, I came to the conclusion that the central point was not about fiqh, but about usul al-fiqh, the fundamentals of Islamic law and jurisprudence. Because in fact, it shapes a mindset. When you come to the text and you try from the text to the context to try to find your way. And I have been working with scholars for 20 years. We were using exactly the same word, reform, but we didn't mean the same thing. Because if you deal with fiqh, which is law and jurisprudence, by definition, laws are changing to adapt yourself to the world which is changing at the same time or beforehand. So you adapt yourself to try to find new laws because you are facing new challenges. But if we want to reform the world in the name of our ethics, you should have a vision. You should go beyond the state of affairs. But if you don't get this, if you only work in law, in the legal tradition, the laws and the fatwa, the legal opinions, and anything which has to do with this critical and evolution, because it evolves, and that no one can deny that we have lots of things that are evolving in the field of fiqh, and we should do this. But the point for me was, I was dealing with scholars speaking about adaptational reform. And I understood from where I am that what I need and what I want, with all the people sharing with me ethics, principles, that in fact, as Christians, or as Jews, or as Buddhists, or as Muslims, or as atheists having a vision for the future, we need a transformational reform, not an adaptational reform. So the point for me is, we speak about the same reform, but how are we going to come back to the scriptural sources and to have this vision for the future? And this is where, for me, we need a shift in the center of gravity of authority in Islam. Because if we only rely on the scholars of the text, ulama and nusus, it's quite clear that they will come with something which is the legal tradition and not a vision of the way we have to deal with the world. And very often when we speak with scholars of the text, ulama and nusus, they speak about the people who are specialists or scholars in other fields, in sciences, in sociology, in human sciences, exact sciences. They speak about specialists, or in Arabic, mutakhassisun, or khubara. But anyone who